The UCC Business Development and Consulting Institute is a multifunctional DBJ-approved business development organization that provides services to assist MSMEs in achieving their business objectives. Our business consulting services improve all facets of corporate operations. Our back office services, Value Edge and Legal Bloom, are designed to provide an effective suite of accounting and financial management solutions and assist businesses in formalizing their activities while conforming to the legal framework such as tax and labor requirements. Learn more about our services at bdci.co.
There is a gap between the access to funding and the availability. Funds are available, but persons are not accessing these funds because of a couple of reasons. And one of them is the presentation. The solution is, how do we go about securing funding? How do we go about teaching persons to secure funding? And that's a part of what we intend to help you with today. The first step in understanding how to go about securing funding is to know that it's about sharing your story. So the question is, what is your story? What's the story of your business? And usually when it comes to preparing a pitch presentation, it's usually the first time that persons think, okay, I'm going to prepare a pitch presentation because this is an opportunity to secure investment for my business. But it's also usually the first time that the founders, the team sits down together to clarify certain things. Because we're doing a business. We're going to be selling baked goods. We're going to be going in a medical diagnostic business. But quite often the team does not necessarily sit down to flesh out what are the ins and outs of this story until it's investment time and you're seeking investment. But I want you to understand that it's actually a dual thing, because here you are seeking investment, and because of that, you want to be able to tell your story. And because you want to be able to tell your story, you sit down together to flesh out what your story is. Understand that investors, on the side of the investors are looking to find the next hot startup. Every investor is looking for that pitch that will become the next Airbnb, that will become the next Amazon, that will become the next best big thing in entrepreneurship. And every entrepreneur wants to pitch their business so that the investors will say, yes, this is the next big ticket item. This is the next business that is worth my investment. This is what the presentation of your pitch will look like in a single visuals. We're going to go through these items one individually soon. But at the intro, we're looking at the why. What's the problem? What's the problem that your business will solve? And then we are looking at the how. How are you going to do that? We then look at the team. And this is the challenge that a lot of our entrepreneurs have. In the story I told you before of Simone, Simone was trying to do it all by herself. She was the one in the kitchen all night. She was the one at the booth presenting. And because she was trying to do it all by herself, there was a challenge, and she missed the opportunity to share with the investors who came to her booth because she was too tired. And what's the vision? Once we have shared all of this information, we get to the point where we can ask the investors, listen, this is what we've shared, the why, the how, this is the dream team, this is our vision. Let's see how you can get on board to help us. All right, let's look at the slides that will be included in an investment, in a pitch, in an investment pitch. There are several different ways that slides can be done for an investment pitch. Most of them include at least 6 or 7 basic slides. More experienced persons doing pitch presentations will vary. You might include other slides, but I'm giving you the absolute basic today. So the introduction slide is the first slide that you will have. Usually you will hear about an elevator pitch. It's the same thing. It's the basic. What is the one line that defines your business? Be concise and be clear in this one-liner. So you want to make it as clear as possible. For example, you want to say something like, we deliver ready meals to our customers in their homes, as opposed to trying to find a fancy way to say, we deliver, we're the next generation of AI culinary deliverers, and we help people. You want to make it simple. Simple just to say, we deliver warm meals to persons in their homes. And that's something that we can relate to coming out of the pandemic, because more persons needed services like that. So you want to make it as concise and as simple as possible in the introduction. Chances are, if you're going to an investment forum, investors would have been listening to several business pitches, and you want yours to stand out from the get-go. You want persons to perk up when they hear your one-liner, when they see how concise and how clear you are communicating. The next slide you want to definitely include in your pitch is the problem that you are solving. A simple description of the problem and how your product is going to solve that problem. You don't want to get too deep into the problem and have your investors lose interest in your pitch. So it's a simple definition. Usually the entire pitch is just a couple of minutes. So each of these slides is as simple as possible, as concise as possible. Third slide is the product and your customer. So you have spoken about the problem. What's the problem? Persons are at home, persons want meals delivered, and we provide that service. There is a growing market, more persons want this service. And then you look at, in the next slide, what you're building and who you're building it for. So what's the product or products, or what are the services? Because it's product and services, we use it interchangeably. And who are your customers? Right. Once you've defined that, you don't need to belabor it too much. You move on to the next slide. And the opportunity, usually opportunity is expressed by total addressable market. And the total addressable market, when you quite often hear persons talk about, well, the tech industry, the tech market is a $15 million market, and we're trying to capture 1% of that. That's fine, but in a pitch presentation, you want to make it as simple as possible. Instead of top down to say, we have this large market and we want to control this small portion of this market, it's a little more effective to say from the bottom up. So you might want to say, for example, we sell units of our software for $100. And the market that's accessible to us is 10,000 customers. Therefore, we're looking at a potential market, total accessible market of $1 million. It's easier for your investors to wrap their minds around that, especially in an investment forum where we're hearing a whole lot of investment ideas. You want your idea, you want your pitch, you want your presentation to stand out above the other presentations that's being shared. And the way we do this, I can't say it often enough, is that you use very concise language. The more concise your language is, the more likely it is that you will be remembered. We next look at the business model, how it is that you're going to make your business profitable. This is also where you would include what you need investment for. And what you need investment for can't be, oh, I have this idea and I've been sitting down watching TV and these ideas come to me and I want your money so I can get up off the couch and do something. No, you want to share an idea that actually has a model and is already profitable, or you can explain how it will be profitable in the future. And that takes us to traction. Traction is about how much you have grown so far. And I know when Lady Hussey spoke about who the clients of the BDCI are, some persons are just at the ideation stage where you have not started yet. And the daunting slide for a pitch presentation for persons who haven't started yet is the traction slides. So you might be in a pitch forum and other persons are going up and say, oh, we have made $1 million in the past 6 months. We've made $5 million in a year. And you're like, oh, I only have an idea. What are the concrete steps that you have taken to make your idea into a business? Have you gone ahead and found team members that you can work with to step forward? Have you done any research? So if you haven't started yet, if you've started, that's fine. And if you have great traction, you probably want to use your traction as the very first slide to say, well, I have $5 million in sales in the past 6 months. Investors love to hear that. But if you don't have that, here you will share with the investors what concrete steps you have taken to take your idea from the idea stage into a business. And you might have taken those steps, and that is exactly what you would share in the traction slide if you have not started as yet. The team. And again, we come back here in the example, in the story I told earlier. Both persons tried to do it on their own and it didn't work. You need a team. No man is an island. We can't say that enough. The team is actually very, very important to, one, the success of the business, and two, how investors will actually view your business. It's a one-man show. Investors might think, what if this great idea, Mr. McKenzie, but what if you get sick? Or what are your expertise? If your expertise, you're communicating, you're chatterbots, you like to share information, that's fine. Who is the numbers guy? Who's the technical person? You're doing a medical diagnostics business, or you're doing a baking business. Who has the technical expertise? So you have to have a team of persons, marketing persons with the technical expertise which within the area that the business exists, and the numbers guy or girl. This team slide is giving me girl power vibes, but whoever it is, you don't get too deep into the backgrounds of the team members, except in the case where someone might have specific education. So one of your team member might have a master's you have an MBA in marketing, for example. That person might be a good go-to person for your marketing aspect of your team. So that is very important. The next slide is the conclusion, and you want to end big. You want to end big. Remind your investors why your investment, why your business should stand out, why they should remember you, why they should actually invest in you. So you start big, you end big. And tell your investors, listen, this is the next big thing, because investors are looking for the next big investment. Let them know that that is you. And let's quickly look at the structure of the presentation. As we said, it includes the introduction, the problem, the product and the customers, the business model, what tractions have you gained so far, your team, and the big finale. When you're doing these slides, remember your slides are not your competition. They're tools. So your slide should not be the thing that is taking over your presentation and all the information is on the slide and the slide is what's grabbing the attention. No, the slide is a tool that is used. You are the star of the show and the slide is your sidekick. So there are some tips to use when you're preparing your slides. 1 point per slide. Don't make the slides overwhelming, just single point per slide. If you use it, it's better to use picture. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you have a picture that represents, your logo might represent your brand, use that picture. If you have a picture of your product, use that picture as opposed to a lot of words on your slides. Minimize the number of words that you have on a particular slide. It's okay to use quotations if quotations are relevant to your presentations. However, don't just throw up a quotation and you're saying something else and expect your audience to read the quotation. If your audience has this thing where they're either reading or listening to you, most often they choose to read and zone you out. And you don't want your investors to ever zone you out. You want to engage them for the time that you're speaking. Avoid text and image clashes. So if you're having text and image, they should complement each other on the slide. Use fonts that are easy to read. If someone is at the back of the room, if you're in a physical situation, they should easily be read. If it's on screen, it should easily be read as well. All important information should be at the top. It's the thing that catches the eye first. And finally, avoid cumulative graphs or complicated diagrams, because these can actually lead to confusion and your investors might not understand where you are. In terms of preparing for the presentation, I can't say it enough. It cannot be said enough. Practice, practice, practice. Practice in front of your mirror. Record yourself doing the presentation. Practice with your business partners, your founders, your team members. Practice, practice, practice. You cannot practice enough before you get to the actual presentation. The more you practice, the more it becomes a part of you. You miss your slide, you miss a word, you miss the PowerPoint went down, and you can still, because it becomes a part of you, you can still continue with your presentation. All right, so the presentation, when we get to the presentation, so that you've been practicing all this time and you get to the presentation now, you're sitting in front of the investor, or you're standing in front of a panel of investors. That's a little daunting. You're standing in front of 7 investors and it's now time to talk about your company. You want to exude confidence and enthusiasm. Show that you're passionate about your business. It's not a, I have this little business and I just want some money. So no, you want to show that, listen, I have this business idea and I'm going to tell you this thing is going to be the next big investment. Show that enthusiasm. Project your voice so that you can be heard. Smile. Especially at the start, you want to start with a smile. You want a pleasant demeanor, but don't smile too much. Like if you're constantly smiling, it's a little creepy. Like, hi, I want to tell you about my business. Like, no, you want to smile, share your information. There will be serious aspects of your discourse, and you want to share that as well. Speak clearly. Speak with cadence. A cadence is the natural rhythm at which you speak. And we usually speak at about 100, 140 words per. You want to use that natural cadence. Don't sound too robotic, don't sound too rehearsed. So one of the things is you don't want to necessarily read from your slides, which is why you only have 1 point per slide. And you don't want to rehearse your slide and then you're reciting it as if it's poetry, because that leads to a lack of confidence in persons listening to you. In terms of your stance and your movements, you want to make them as natural as possible. Here are a few things to advise, and we're just about to wrap up this section. There are a few things that you need to avoid while you're doing your pitch presentation in order to secure investments. you don't want to leave out the description of the problem. The business is based on the solution of a problem. The university exists to ensure that persons who were not able to fit into the traditional universities that you had to go to university in the day, persons are working. So UCC exists to ensure that persons who were working and had other life responsibility could do school in the evening, they could do school on the weekends, they could do flexible learning and still get their degrees to take themselves to the, so talk about the problem and ensure that that is a part of your pitch, because the business is based on that. Why are you talking about a solution if you have not defined a problem? You want to avoid the use of jargons and highfalutin terms. Keep it as simple as possible. And you want to keep it simple because you might be in a technical industry and everybody knows about your medical diagnostics background, and that's fine. And everybody knows about your tech background, and that's fine. But your investors might not know. So you want to wow your investors by avoiding the jargons and explaining to your investors, listen, this is the problem, this is the solution that our company brings. Avoid exaggeration and avoid untruths. I don't even need to explain that. I don't need to get any deeper into that. Just avoid that. You want to avoid looking at your slides while speaking. It's a little easier if you're actually doing a digital presentation because your screen is in front of you. But for most often, your slide is behind you. And this is what happens if I turn around to talk about what's on my slide. Here, the UCC BDCI, I'm turning my back to you. I've lost contact with you. When I make eye contact with my investors, with the persons I'm presenting to, I'm saying to them, I am speaking to you, I am sharing this information with you. And when I turn away, I'm like, well, you know, I'm talking about what's around there. And they will, once that contact is broken, they tend to lose interest. So you want to avoid that. So Ralston calls it screen versus presenter disease. So you don't want to be fighting with the screen. You don't want the screen or the projection or your slides to be taking over your presentation. You are the presenter. You are the star of the show. Your slides are just there to help you to bring across your points. A few final things that you do not want to use in your slides, or things you should avoid, is unnecessary slides. You're not just putting in slides just to make up time. Avoid the unnecessary. Every slide that's included in your presentation should be with the explicit purpose of trying to secure investment for your business. Every slide. Again, avoid complex graphs, avoid complex charts, and you want to avoid videos. This is this kind of pet peeve of mine. So I've come to watch you, I've come to listen to you, and you are showing me a video. And chances are you're showing me a video on an internet platform that I already have access to via my phone. If you're showing me that, I can log on to my phone and just watch the video. And quite often, just like turning around, you're breaking the contact when you're showing a video because someone else is presenting. When you're showing that video, it breaks contact with your audience that you're presenting to at that point in time. So you want to avoid videos while you're doing your pitch presentations. And you might say, oh, well, but you know, the video has so much information in it. Save it. Share the information with the persons in front of you, whether digitally, via the internet, or if you're there live, share that information with them. Take the information from the video. You might have done the video might be about your company, the video might be another pitch that you've done. You share the information where you are at that point in time. This is where we started. There's a gap. There's a gap between you with your ideas, with your company, and the access to funds. But I strongly believe that in this room of 65 participants now, I strongly believe that there are persons here with ideas that are actually the next big thing. It's for you to believe it. It's for you to take that vision. It's for you to take that vision, grow that vision with a team of persons who are willing to work with you and articulate that vision in a way that the investors will say, I can't make this one pass. I can't even make the other investors hear about this because this is the next big business. That is the impact that you want to have when you prepare your pitch presentation. It's about bridging the gap. It's about bridging the gap between access to funds and the availability of funds. Funds are available. Funds are available, but they're only accessible when you are able to put together your vision, articulate that vision. You have a team that you're working with that will help you to get to the next level. As Jack Welch said, a good business leader creates a vision, articulates that vision, passionately owns that vision, and relentlessly drives it to completion. I believe that you in this room today, you have that vision. So many of us, like Patrick that we spoke about, have the vision. Patrick had a wonderful idea of remote diagnostic testing that if he had done that, come COVID lockdown time when persons needed medical services, his business would have been the next big thing. You need to articulate that vision. Don't just take the vision and put it aside. Don't take the vision and try to do it all by yourself. Articulate that vision, have a team you're working with, and see it through to completion. And I believe Lady Hussey, BDCI is having a number of these presentations. I believe that someone in this room, someone in this presentation will be the next big business idea. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I look forward to seeing you successful in your business.
Thank you. You did an awesome job, Mr. McKenzie. All right, so next up, we have Peter Farmanek. So Peter is the CEO of Young America Capital, which is a licensed broker-dealer based in New York metro area, consisting of 72 seasoned professionals. The firm serves the investment banking needs of early stage and middle market companies. It also offers specialized placement and third-party marketing services to both funds and investors in the alternative investment arena. So who is Peter? Peter is the CEO. He is a certified public accountant with 30+ years of experience advising fund managers, family offices, and companies. He previously worked as a CFO and deal flow origination analyst at Southern Cross Group, as financial analyst at Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette and Spear, Lees and Kellogg, and owner of UHNW Focus CPA. All of that to say that Peter knows what he's talking about, and he's really into money. So on to you, Peter.
Thank you, Tennille. So I'm going to share my screen in a second, but before I do that, I just wanted to dovetail on Gary's phenomenal presentation. You know, I think this was the best presentation I've ever seen, most comprehensive, very exciting and exhilarating talk on pitch deck construction and presentation skills that I have ever seen. And so I'm very excited. I want to get Gary's contact information because I want to work with Gary after this webinar because he sounds phenomenal. I would say one thing that I didn't see his whole presentation, but make sure you put your contact information on one of the slides as well, because sometimes people want to contact you after the show, or they want to jot down your email address or your telephone number, and having that on there really makes a big difference. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to just talk. I'm going to talk as fast as I can talk because I know I want to keep you guys motivated and entertained. And so first thing I wanted to tell you is a little bit about who we are, what we do. I was just in Jamaica for a week in June. I met with a number of people in Montego Bay. The people in the rows in bold are people that I would call conglomerates or serial entrepreneurs or larger companies. But we met with a phenomenal group of people. I think Jamaica, I'm doing this throughout the Caribbean. Jamaica is the friendliest, warmest, and most welcoming community that I've seen in the Caribbean. So I think that's a phenomenal story that I just wanted to share with you. We have a 75-person team, but we have a 6-person team that just focuses on the Caribbean. We started in the Bahamas, so we now have a bunch of clients in the Bahamas. We are doing work in Barbados, Dominica, and the Dominican Republic. We just added a new teammate. Let me see where is available to talk to people. His name is Tristan, and he is a friend of mine now that I spent time with when I was in Kingston, and he is my local man on the ground. So I wanted to mention all of that. If you have a project or a need, not only will you have access to me, but you will have access to Chris Denny as well and other parts of our team. I also just wanted to mention very briefly, so we are one of the largest broker dealers and investment banks in the United States that focuses primarily on seed and Series A capital raises. So this is a list of completed transactions that we have done, our team has done, and it covers the whole spectrum of different stages of growth. So it's got seed through pre-IPO and IPO, but we're close, as you see here, this is 2021, a year. So it's 2 transactions a month. So we have a very high volume. And so what that means is we really are in the deal flow, and we are expert at getting deals closed. And they're usually smaller deals. The smaller the deal, the harder the capital raise. So what I'm going to talk about very briefly today is raising capital for early stage companies. So an early stage company is, in industry jargon, is seed or Series A capital raise, which is probably what most of you guys are doing. Let me just see that. So where are you going to get your capital from when you are trying to raise capital? This is in degree of difficulty order. So friends and family are the easiest people to get money from. The disadvantage, I have the pros and cons here. They add the least value most of the time, unless you have, Michael Lee Chin as one of your relatives. If you have other people outside your friends and family that are high net worth, ultra high net worth people, then those are better than friends and family, because then you're not disturbing your family dynamic if something goes wrong. And you're also getting somebody that has a mentorship skills and other resources, and probably brings a Rolodex with you. But they are unpredictable as to whether or not they'll actually invest. So next most complicated investor to win in this process is family offices. And then you get into the institutional investor community, which is venture funds, corporate venture funds, and corporate development executives at what we call global companies, or in the case of Jamaica, would have been those bolded companies like a Deramon or Jamaica Producers. You can also, there are also a lot of junior capital funds where they supply growth equity, structured equity, or debt. And then you can also get venture debt and also non-bank lenders. Jamaica has the most mature and most robust capital markets in all of the Caribbean, based upon my travels. And so you also have the virtue of, if and when you do grow your company, you're going to be able to list it on the Jamaica Stock Exchange, which is really a very functional stock exchange. The methodology and process that we employ when we're helping companies like yours to raise capital is in what we call an 18-week project plan. So this is an 18-week Gantt chart, and it shows how the process runs. We try to run our processes as quickly as possible, because if you have a long drawn-out process, investors think there's something wrong with the capital raise, and they are a little more suspicious. So you want to run a fairly quick capital raise if you can, and you want to do it. You have to be cognizant of holidays and slow times, so that could elongate the process. But this slide deck will be available after the conference. So I would encourage you to use this as a template of how you're going to run your process. But if you see right here, finalized pitch deck and executive summary, you need Gary McKenzie or somebody like him to help you get a really good pitch deck, because if we see a lot of mediocre pitch decks, and I agree with Gary, if it doesn't have excitement and a compelling story, then you will lose your audience. There's a fine line between nice to have and must have, and only must have deals get funded. So, please focus on the succinct and impactful messaging in your pitch deck and your executive summary, and use somebody like Gary, who can really has been there, done that, and knows the process, because you can try it by yourself, but I think getting help usually makes a big difference. So without going into too much detail on this process, you basically want to be coached through the process, either by your accountant, your lawyer, or an investment banker, if you can entice an investment banker to participate in some way, shape, or form. Chris Denny is right in Jamaica. I'm sure Chris and Gary would be a great teammate to help some of the earlier stage companies in Jamaica that are looking to raise capital. And we have an extensive network of investors in the United States, throughout the Caribbean, and around the world that we can show deals to if they are mature enough to excite institutional investors. I just wanted to touch next on research resources. So in a perfect world, information and knowledge is power. So you want to have the most powerful tools that you can employ in order to maximize the probability of success. So we would, at the basic level, there is a software called Crunchbase Pro. The website is crunchbase.com. That's an inexpensive software that you can use on your own. It's I think they have a free version too. Phenomenal software. It is the entry-level software of research tools for people who are raising capital. We use these other software packages. We spend about $200,000 a year on software, and we have 75 people, so we amortize that over $5 to $10 million of revenue. But it would be ideal if you can get someone who within your team of consultants and advisors that has access to some of this software. PitchBook is our #1 tool. I would encourage you to look at PitchBook. A lot of the universities have subscriptions to PitchBook for their students. Same thing with Capital IQ. And Bloomberg would be, I would say, a last choice. Bloomberg is only good for public markets transactions, but if you can get access to Bloomberg through your university, that could be good too. If somebody has a request for me, oh, Peter, can you email me the PitchBook profile on Jamaica producers? I am happy to do that, just to establish a bond and become friends with people. So we do that on a regular basis, but oftentimes we're using it as part of a comprehensive client engagement process. We also use ZoomInfo a lot. It's a very high-end contact database where I can get the CEOs. The reason why I was able, just going back to this other slide, the reason why I was able to get so many meetings in such a short period of time is because I used all these different tools to identify who were the players in both Montego Bay and Kingston that are worthy of meeting. And not everybody agreed to meet with me because some people don't like getting unsolicited emails. But all these people agreed to meet after seeing who we are and what we do. So I would encourage you to use tools as frequently as possible, and use people who have tools, because those are the people that, if you're using the tools properly, will be exciting teammates to help you become successful in your process. This slide just talks briefly about the different stages of funding and the attributes of each stage. So basically, a lot of you are at the pre-seed stage, where you're bootstrapping your company. It's in research and development. You can't expect a huge company valuation at that stage. You probably want to get $50,000 to $100,000 at the most to flesh out your business and see whether or not you can move towards what's called a minimum viable product, which is what customers want to see before they will become early adopting customers. But if you can think of those two goals, minimum viable product and early adopting customers, if you can talk with that lingo to investors, it will make them realize you know the roadmap that you're going to pursue to become successful with your business. And that's crucial for having your business to be viewed as a must-have rather than a nice-to-have. Okay. Seed stage capital raises, it's where you are moving towards a minimum viable product. Maybe you have some early adopting customers, and your valuation can increase. Now, obviously, the valuations in the United States are different than the valuations in Jamaica, so I won't draw any parallels, but we would work through all of this with you if we were engaged to help you with the capital raise, or any of the local Jamaican investment banks, which I met with a lot of them, Mayberry, JMMB, NCB, and probably Scotia. They're all will be willing to give you some free advice about this process as well. And you may have friends that are working at any of those firms, but we would love to we would love to collaborate with them and what we're talking about with a lot of the Jamaican investment banks is being their U.S. strategic alliance partner to help distribute their deals to investors outside of Jamaica. And we're looking to team up with them so that when we work with Jamaican companies, we can have a local chaperone and a local teammate to help us to be successful for our clients and also remain compliant with the local regulatory authorities. Series A is where you've already got a minimum viable product. You're probably generating revenue, and you are most likely to be worthy of getting institutional investor funding. So I didn't talk at great length about the sources of capital, but over here I would say there's a wide range and variety of investors. You want to get the investors that add the most value at each stage of your capital raising development process. So again, I would encourage you to use this type of document as a roadmap, but people like Gary intuitively know a lot of this too. So I would encourage you to use his resources in addition to investment banking resources, because the consulting and advisory service providers that help the investment banking and capital raising process are crucial to the success of your process. And Gary brought a phenomenal point out. Don't try to do it alone. Use a team. Different teammates have different skill sets, and it will really enhance the value of your company and the value of your offering if you have a diversified team of service providers and senior management team, and ideally an advisory board or a formal board as well. So as we get into later stages of funding, you're raising larger money, the valuations are bigger, you're going only to institutional investors at that point in time. So I won't spend time on that particular slide because we're focused more on the seed and Series A on this discussion. But I'm going to jump into equity dilution. This is an example of how you as a founder will be diluted. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's a mathematically focused slide, but basically you have to be willing to give up capital in order to induce investors to become your partner. And so you want to do that in a manageable way so you don't get diluted too much too early, so that you can continue to facilitate the growth and success of your business along the way. Otherwise, oftentimes you get kicked out of the company by disgruntled investors or greedy investors. So you want to carefully control the amount of dilution you experience as the founder to make sure that you retain as much ownership as possible whilst bringing in high quality investors as well. I want to talk next about running the capital raise process. Okay, and basically capital raising is a process. It doesn't happen magically. As Gary articulated, you need to have a methodology and process, and the preparation of your deck is the beginning of that process. Becoming excellent and articulate at your presentation skills is a phenomenal aspect of what you should be doing. And so Gary hit a lot of phenomenal buttons of what really needs to be doing for you to be successful and to be convincing investors that your investment is a must have, not a nice to have. But going back to the process, if you have a business that is growing or positioned for growth, I highly recommend you try to hire a professional capital raiser. And it could be an internal person who really takes perhaps equity in your company or gets some type of compensation, whether it be cash or non-cash compensation, or an external capital raiser, so that they are motivated to bring in capital and you tie their performance to the success of their capital raising process. An investment banker is 7% cash plus 7% at the market warrants and a small cash or equity work fee. I believe it's less softer percentages in Jamaica, but I haven't really spent time talking about what pricing is. But your local investment bankers, Chris Denny, which is part of our team, Gary probably has great relationships, and the university has great relationships with all the investment bankers. We are all here to help you be successful. And there's nothing more exciting for us than participating in a successful capital raise and a successful growth of the company. So we feel electricity when you are successful, and we want to position you for success. And so you want to make sure you have the right teammates to get that done. I would also say one of the things that often happens when we're talking to investors, we can do one of two things. We can do either a rifle shot outreach, which is inexpensive and a lower probability of success, or you can run a comprehensive and coordinated process. You need to decide with your service providers what level of responsibility and a role and responsibility that your internal and external capital raisers are, so that you can manage that process, the Gantt chart that I showed earlier, in a time efficient and succinct manner to maximize the probability of success. I will say here in the United States, some early stage venture capitalists will not talk to investment bankers. So if I have a client and I know my client's deck could be a good fit for a few venture capitalists that don't talk to investment bankers, I personally give you the contact person of the VC and let you contact them directly, because I'd rather us all be successful and increase the probability of success than just try to maximize my fee. But be cognizant of that, because not all investors love investment bankers. It's just a fact of life. And so you want to maximize your probability of success and keep that in the back of your mind. This is a big point, which I talked about earlier. Lack of access to proper research tools and warm and receptive introductions diminishes the probability of success tremendously. Here in the US, you want to make sure you use a SEC and FINRA registered broker-dealer. In Jamaica, it's a similar story with, you want to make sure your service provider is registered with the FSC if it's a Jamaica capital raise. And the last thing on that is running a well-managed process will avoid a process that we call herding cats. Herding cats is no fun, doesn't end well. It's impossible to herd cats. You want to run a tight and well-organized process if you're going to be successful. This slide was relating to COVID-19, which is still relevant, but I think the declining stock market is actually more relevant. The declining stock market has, and so I'll probably replace this slide with a new paradigm slide of declining valuations, and that has adversely affected tech companies and life sciences companies here in the United States. I think the Jamaican stock market has done better on a relative basis than the US stock market, but you have to be cognizant of the supply and demand of capital, because if it's a tough time to raise capital, you have to adjust your expectations of valuation and terms to make sure that you don't lose an investor because you're not being reasonable based upon the current market conditions. So just, this is the last slide. I try to keep it short. You know, you want to, there is plenty of capital available for the winners, and those are the must-haves. And so you want to position yourself both with your presentation, with your verbal skills, and with your due diligence materials showing investors that you're running a well-managed company. You want to position yourselves to be a must-have, not a nice to have. You know, you have to raise as much capital as you can when you're raising capital, because sometimes the window is closed for raising capital, and you want to make sure that you don't run out of capital. You need to be very good at Zoom pitching. It's a fact of life, and you know, technology can be challenging, but make sure you know how to use Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Google Meet, because you don't know what software the investor is going to want to use. And so that is really the end of my story. I'm really excited to work with all of you to help you be successful. I'm excited to work with Tennille and Gary going forward, and I would be happy to answer any questions that any of you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Formanek. This was really great. As y'all can see, you saw one side from Gary showing you how to prepare yourself, and then you see what the investors are looking for with Mr. Formanek. So now we're going to open up to question and answer section. So does anyone have any questions? Please use the chat section here under question and answer. But from my point of view, Gary, Mr. McKenzie, you did an awesome job. As you said, it's all about bridging that gap, right? Knowing what to prepare, what to bring, right? But Gary, I have a question for you. Why you didn't tell them that they need to dress properly too?
I was trying to keep it as succinct as possible, but yes, your appearance matters, and as Peter was saying, get used to the idea of online pitch. Your setting matters as well. We don't want to see persons lying in bed, or we're seeing the entire family or the dog and the cat running after each other. We want to be able to focus on the pitch while you're giving the pitch, whether it is live or if it is via Zoom or any other platform.
And don't have an unmade bed in the back of the Zoom.
Oh,
call.
no,
And
definitely not.
I see that on a regular basis, and it's just
Yes.
breaks my heart when people do that.
All right, we have a question from Akeem Edwards. And Akeem, let me tell, I actually know Akeem. Akeem is actually going to be joining the universal pitching competition. I can't remember the exact name of it, but there's this big pitching competition that is global.
It's
And
a
he's
World
a
Cup.
part of it. Oh, yeah, it's the pitching World Cup, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So pitching for funding requires a person to have good credit or that it isn't isn't that a factor? Pitching for funding requires a person to have good credit
Yeah.
or
And that is a factor. So, because, you know, we do due diligence on our clients and we do credit and background checks on our clients. And we are told by the regulators that if your client has very bad criminal history or bankruptcy or really bad credit, you need to be willing and able to disclose that to investors. You can still take on the client if there are extenuating circumstances, but the way to get around that would be to team up with somebody who has good credit and tell everybody that he's going to be the person, he or she is going to be the person handling financial affairs, and that me with bad credit, I'm going to be doing sales and marketing and other non-financial company building. So that's what I would recommend on that one.
Okay, thanks. I have another question. In regards to equity investors and ownership, is it said that once the percent of equity is 20% or higher, they are an associate? Can you expound on what's a good percent to dilute at the scaling phase?
It really depends on what industry you're in. So some industries like biotech or life sciences, you could get a valuation of $20 million, even though you have no revenue. If you're dealing with consumer products like food or beverage, you're not going to get a $20 million valuation until you have about $3 to $5 million of revenue, because the maximum valuation that you get credit for in a more traditional, older legacy type of industry, like in manufacturing and industrials, would be 2 to 3 times revenue. So you need to be reasonable in your expectations relating to valuation. I didn't talk about it in this deck, but having a valuation done by your investment bank or by your CPA firm really helps a lot. And you can basically make sure that they make the valuation as high as possible by working with them and talking through, hey, if we include, you know, some unicorns, won't it drive up the valuation? But if you don't have a valuation metric in a document, then investors are going to try to dictate a lower valuation to you. So being on the offensive rather than the defensive would be have a valuation and have it be defensible, drafted by a professional who really can then talk to the investor directly. So I wouldn't say, I'm not going to give you absolute percentage guidance on what amount of valuation is appropriate, what amount of dilution is appropriate at any point in time. It's got to be in the context of what your service providers and your valuation consultant think is defensible.
Okay. Here's a question from Everton Tate. What if you do your best at a pitch, but then you get turned down? What should be your next step?
Persistence. There's a reason I included in this slide, in one of the first slides, that you're pitching to investors because you want the investment, but it also on the other side help you and your teammates to figure out where the business is going, because as you prepare that presentation, the clarity comes, where are we going, how are we going to get there, who are we taking with us. You might get turned down by one investor. Keep going, just be persistent.
Yeah, and don't be shy about asking people that turn you down, in a polite way, can you please supply some feedback as to what I can do to improve my pitch, and or what did you not like about my investment thesis? So people are these investors have a big ego. They love to expound and act like they're very knowledgeable. If you ask them nicely, they will give you some feedback, and then you incorporate that feedback into the next version of your pitch.
Yes, I agree. So for Mr. Farmanek, there's a question for you. Is there a type of business or an industry that investors less like to invest in? And they would also like your opinion on it based on what your company does.
Sure. So, we do work in all industries, and in the United States, we're one of the largest cannabis and hemp focused investment banks as well. So that was an industry that most investors would not invest in 5 years ago. And now all of the investors are at least considering it and learning about it. Oil and gas used to be a huge industry. A lot of investors in the United States and Europe are saying that we are worried about our carbon footprint, and so we're not giving permission to our investment professionals to focus more on oil and gas and carbon emitting industries. So it really, but for every investor that is not going to invest in oil and gas, we can always find investors that still want to invest in oil and gas. Same thing with cannabis, same thing with every industry. But you need to be cognizant of whether or not your industry is in favor or out of favor, because it's going to affect the probability of success.
Okay, thanks. Mishka Allen has a question. For a new business at the idea stage, which elements of the business plan would convince you the most to invest or partner with?
A superstar CEO who really is dynamic, charismatic, and convincing. That always wins the day when you're talking to investors. They want to get excited by the future relationship of supporting a CEO that they really feel can be successful, and also someone who employs the right teammates and service providers, and so knows how to build a team. I think that's very important too. So those would be the two most important criteria for me, but Gary probably has his own viewpoints.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there.
Yeah. Mario McGregor says he has 2 products that are very innovative and require funding. Would it be a good idea to just go public to get interest for pre-order funding, or seek funding privately?
Well, you can't go public with an idea. So I think you need to take baby steps first. So that's the pre-seed round, and then a seed round, and then the Series A round. Maybe you could jump right from a Series A round to a public listing, but most of the time it's not going to happen. You really want to do it in a methodical basis while diluting yourself as little as possible. But you can't just go public because you want to be public. And then most entrepreneurs don't have the bona fides and the accumulative life experience to run a public company. So what I would hate to see happen is somebody jumps into a public listing and then doesn't know how to manage the company and doesn't know how to manage a public company. So you need to layer in a lot of a senior management team and inside and outside consultants when you're a public company, and that costs a lot of money. So you want to do it only once you really have the momentum of growing revenue. So that's really when I would get excited about going public.
Thanks. Akeem is asking, is there an annual investors forum where startups can go and interact with donors for seed funding or loan to scale businesses? In your experience, you know of anything like that?
There are plenty of events that occur in the United States every month for entrepreneurs. I mean, there's Caribbean events as well. If you really got to just do your research, and I think the university probably could supply a list of upcoming conferences that people could evaluate attending. And there's a lot of online conferences now too. So I think if you want to go to events, I would strongly encourage you to attend events that are industry specific to your industry, rather than just trying to go to pitch events. I think if you want to learn how to pitch, work with somebody like Gary and get a good deck. If you want to pitch to investors, you want to go to an industry specific conference. And also, it's nice to go to conferences, but it's nice to generate revenue. So focus on building your minimum viable product and building your early adopting customer relationships. That is the path to most probable to success.
Yes. What I've been experiencing lately is that there are lots of pitching events now. Everyone, when they say entrepreneur, there is, in line with pitching entrepreneur. Everyone is just talking about the idea. So this is the next big thing right now in the whole industry, I would say, these pitching events. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed both of the presentations. And I just want to thank you both for taking the time to express and explain what needs to be done if you want to have a winning pitch for investors. Gary on his side explaining how the perfect pitch is done, and Peter explaining what they're looking for, right? So if there are no more questions, okay, 1 second. I have 2 more questions. Good day. I am working on an AI reading assessment and intervention program. I wasn't able to find an individual here in Jamaica to create the product, so I used a freelancer from India. I have realized that he is trying to have control of the sections. How do I deal with that and the potential investors? Should I just try and get someone to create a new product? Well,
I think you should have your lawyer involved and make sure that your contractual rights are not being violated. But you want to. If it's your intellectual property, you don't want people to try to take advantage of you. So, but if you entered into a contract that did not prohibit that, then you should have gotten a lawyer involved earlier on the process. But you can always hire a new service provider if this one is not working out for you.
yes. And with that, if there are no more questions, if you do have any questions, you can forward them. You can go to our website and you'll find our emails there. Our website once more is bdci.co. We will be sending out a copy of the video as well as copies of the slides, so that can help you out as well. And thank you everyone for joining, and lunch is on you.
Thank you so much.